There is a moment that people on Ozempic keep describing almost word for word, and not just Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, the whole family of these new drugs. It is late in the evening, the kitchen is clean, the day is basically over, nothing is wrong, and they notice an absence. For the first time, and as long as they can remember, the background station has gone quiet. They have a name for that station now. They call it food noise. A low, near constant channel running under everything else. Thinking about the next meal, the next snack, the cupboard, the thing you promised yourself you would not eat, the wanting that never fully switched off even right after you had eaten. Most people who have it never called it anything because they assumed it was simply what having a mind was like. And then they take the medication, and within a week or two, the station cuts out. Silence. Not willpower, not discipline, just gone. I want to talk about that silence, and I want to leave you with something concrete for it. It is one small protocol for the hours that come back when the noise stops. But I want to say early that I do not think this is only a story about food, and if food noise is not your channel, do not leave yet, because I think the same structure is running under a lot of us. Some people's background station was never hunger. It was the next win, the next reassurance, the next drink, the next scroll, the next achievement that was supposed to finally quiet the thing underneath and never quite did. What the food noise people are stumbling into first because a drug happened to turn their particular dial is something that was always waiting under every one of these channels. That is why I think it matters far beyond the pharmacy. Here is what I believe is true. The medication turns down one term in a much larger picture. It quiets the wanting. But quiet is not the same as direction. The silence does not tell you what to do with the room it just emptied. You can outsource the quieting to chemistry. You cannot outsource the authorship of what comes next. And this matters now in a way it never has before, because this is not a handful of people. Tens of millions are on these drugs. Tens of millions more love someone who is, or are waiting for a prescription, or are watching a parent slowly change in front of them. Whatever you think about any of it, we are running the largest experiment in human wanting that has probably ever been run. For the first time, millions of people are experiencing one of the oldest drives turned down like a dial from the outside without having to fight it. And what they are finding on the far side of it is worth paying very careful attention to. This is medicine, and it deserves to be talked about as medicine. A receptor in the brain and the gut doing exactly what the chemistry says it will do, and relieve that people who spent 30 years fighting their own appetite have earned many times over. All of that stands. But there is a second thing happening inside that relief, and it gets almost no attention because everyone is busy talking about the weight. The same silence that removed the noise also removed a cover. And under that cover, there was a room nobody had walked into in years. Let me be precise about what these drugs actually do, because the mechanism is the whole point. They are called GLP-1 receptor agonists. In plain terms, they mimic a hormone your body already makes after you eat. The one that signals fullness and slows down how fast your stomach empties, and they act on the appetite centers of the brain. Semaglutide, tirzepatide, Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, Zepbound. In the large trials, the weight loss is real and substantial. Roughly 15% of body weight for one, around 20% for another. These are not small numbers. So here is the finding that gets read as a disappointment, and I want to slow down to it. When people stop taking the drug, the weight tends to come back. In the follow-up on one of the main trials, participants regained about 2/3 of what they had lost within a year of stopping. The moment the hand comes off the dial springs back. And I want to give the strongest reading of that fact its full weight before I say anything of my own, because it can genuinely dent everything I am about to build. That reading goes like this. Obesity is a chronic metabolic condition. So chronic conditions need chronic treatment. You do not stop taking blood pressure medication and then call the returning blood pressure a failure of your authorship, a room you neglected to furnish. The pressure comes back because the biology is the biology. By that reading, the regain is not an opening at all. It is proof that the thing was always physiological. And all this talk about rooms and authorship is just dressing up a real medical condition. The medical answer is simple. Keep taking the medicine. I think that reading is largely correct. About the body and about the weight, it is right. The medicine keeps working while you take it, and stopping is not a character test. If you and your doctor decide chronic treatment is the honest answer, then it is the honest answer, and nothing I say competes with it. But it is right about the weight and silent about the attention. Even if the biology stays chronic forever, even if you never come off the drug, the hours, the noise used to occupy still come back to you the whole time you are on it. The chronic disease reading answers what happens to the scale. It does not answer what happens to the returned time. Those are two different questions, and the drug can settle the first one for good while leaving the second one entirely untouched. That is the part I want to stay with. Not that the silence is a cure, that the silence is borrowed, and that even borrowed silence hands you a room. I do not know that specific silence from the inside, but I know a version of it, and I suspect a lot of us do. My own background station was never food. It was the next task at work that never felt quite ready to be seen. I have told that story in other videos, so here I only need the part that it belongs to this one. When that channel finally went quiet, the silence did not write anything. It just gave me back the room to write in. I still had to decide what went into it. Quieting and authorship are two different jobs, and only one of them can be done for you. I want to be careful about the picture I keep using, the dial, because the drug knows nothing about dials. The molecule has no concept of value or belief or direction. It alters appetite signaling in the gut and in the brain. And that is all it does. The dial is my lens, not the pharmacology. But here's the picture, and you can check it against your own life. Your drive to act is not one dial. It is a small mixing board. The one I take apart in my video on why wanting it more never gets you unstuck. The wanting, the pull of the food in front of you is one dial on that board. And what the drug does in this picture is reach over from the outside and turn that single dial down. The numbers and the receptors are solid. The mixing board is just a way of seeing what they leave behind. Because turning a dial down does not choose the music. It only changes the volume. And this is the thing people are discovering quietly that the marketing does not mention. When the wanting goes silent, you do not automatically receive a new set of wants to replace it. You receive space. The attention that used to be spent hours after hours on the next meal and the next snack and the guilt about both comes back to you. And a returned hour is not a plan. It is an empty stretch of the day, and something always moves in to fill it. The only question is whether you decide what that is or whether the default decides for you. There is a second, more delicate thing underneath. And this is the part I most want you to stay for, because I think it reaches the people whose channel was never food at all. For a lot of people, food was never only food. It was a way to end a feeling, to soften an evening, to put a floor under a bad day. The wanting was loud partly because it was doing a job. And so when the drug quiets it, the feeling it used to manage does not disappear. It is still there. It has just lost its usual exit. Sit with that, because it is not only about food and it is not only about a snack at 9 in the evening. The feeling that lost its exit might be grief you have been eating around or drinking around or achieving around for years. It might be a loss you never fully put down, so you kept the station loud enough to never have to hear it. Some people did not have food noise. They had work noise or the noise of the next accomplishment. And one day they got everything they were chasing and the room went flat and quiet anyway. And there was the feeling still sitting there, having lost the exit they had built for it. The channel is different for each of us. The structure is the same. The noise was loud, partly because silence would have meant sitting in a room with something you had spent a long time not having to face. And so the honest question underneath all of it is not about food. It is, what was the noise for in the first place? And who wrote the first sentence that says you have to numb a feeling with food, with work, with achievement? Because very often the honest answer is that you did not write it. It was written early by someone else in a house you did not choose before you had much of a say. Think about what happens when you switch off a radio that has been running in the kitchen all day, so long that you stopped hearing it at all. You do not get an instruction, you get the room. And the room might be peaceful, and it might be empty, and it might have a question in the middle of it that you simply couldn't hear over the noise. The noise was not only a nuisance. For some people, it was also a way of never having to sit alone in a room with that question. Turn the noise off and the question becomes audible for the first time. That is not the drug failing. That is the drug working and handing you back something it was never designed to answer. Two findings sit side by side here, and the honest position holds both at once. The drug does its job precisely and honestly, and the rest was never its job. And the noise it silenced was never a virtue either. The wanting, turning up that loud for that long was a cost, and paying it for decades wore people down in ways that deserves compassion, not nostalgia. The regained data says the same thing from both directions. The medicine keeps working while you take it, and the medicine alone was never going to write the next chapter. Here's where authorship comes in. There is one more thing that silence reveals, and is almost the most important. When the noise was loud, the wanting felt like a law. It felt like gravity, like something built into the body that could not be argued with, only obeyed. And then a small weekly injection turned it down, and it turned out not to behave like a law at all. I go into the difference between a real law and a man-made rule in my video on perfectionism. The short version is that almost nothing running your life is a wall. It is a price, and a price can be renegotiated. The drug proved that about one drive, most people were completely certain was fixed, which should make you wonder what else you have been treating as a wall when it was only a price you had been paying for years without ever checking. So authorship here is not some big victory, it is quiet, like the silence itself. And I do not want to hand you a big question and leave you standing alone in the room with it, because a question with no first step just keeps you standing still. So let me give you something smaller than a life plan, something you could actually run. For the next 30 days. Notice the returned hour, the stretch that used to be spent on the next meal or the next win or the next scroll. And each evening, when it arrives, answer one small question before anything else moves in. What is this hour for tonight? Say it in one plain sentence. Cook the thing. Call the person. Walk, read, rest, and then let the hour actually be that on purpose. That is the whole protocol. No project, no program, nothing to optimize. One authored hour a day. And at 30 days in, look honestly at the scoreboard. How many of those hours did you write, and how many did the default write while you were deciding? It is falsifiable. You will know at 30 days whether you authored the room or the scrolling did. And I want to be just as clear about the other honest answer, because I refuse to turn this into one more optimization project, one more thing you have to fill and improve and never rest inside. Look into that returned hour. Maybe what you actually want there is nothing. Maybe after everything, you simply want the room to stay quiet and to be allowed to rest in it. That is an authored answer too. Choosing stillness on purpose is not the same as the default filling the space while you look away. Sometimes the truest thing to put in the room is nothing, and to meet it. The point was never that you owe the empty hour a project. The point is that you, and not the old default, get to say what it is for, and rest is a legitimate thing for it to be for. So I keep coming back to that person standing in the kitchen at 9 in the evening in a silence they have not heard in 30 years. The familiar story is that the silence is the happy ending. I do not think it is. I think it is the first genuinely open moment they have had in decades, and the medicine carried them to the doorway of it and stopped, because that is where the drug's work ends and theirs begins. The noise is gone. The hours are coming back, one evening at a time. And if that kitchen is yours, then for the first time in a long time, those hours are nobody's but yours. The smallest true move is not to solve the whole room tonight. It is to name what this 1 hour is for and let it be that. Start with 1 hour, small enough that you can actually sign it.